Louisiana's Commissioner of Administration, Mr. J. Dardenne, back again today. Hey, Mr. J, welcome back to KEEL. How you doing? Probably up early and working already, I would bet.
Well, that's right. Good morning, Robert. Doing fine, thank you.
So, Revenue Estimating Conference, there's a lot about this I don't understand because as Aaron will readily tell you, my IQ is somewhat limited. What is it once again?
I think he's at 87.
80, no, it's maybe 88. The point being, she's got a lot of questions about this. I am so confused, as are most people, as to how the REC works. I know it's got to be unanimous. I know you guys estimate the amount of money Louisiana is going to come in so that all the departments can operate. You guys sort of take it from here and help me out.
Well, you've got the right basic understanding. The REC is a constitutionally created entity, 4 people, the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate, Governor through his representative, which is me, and an independent economist, Jim Richardson from LSU. They must agree unanimously on what the revenue of the state looks like. They meet at least 4 times a year to make whatever changes are appropriate based upon recommendations of 2 economists. One works for the Division of Administration, one works for the legislature. And their job is as professionals, is to recommend what they believe the revenue for the state will be for the year. It is an estimate. You cannot have certainty when you're trying to predict how much tax revenue will come in. It's a cyclical thing. It's up and down, and you're never going to get it exactly right. There's been some criticism of the REC that it never gets it right. Well, we're never going to get it exactly right. It is an estimate. It's designed to tell you what you think you will have by way of revenue so that you can determine, so the legislature can determine what the expenditures of the state will be. That's the REC in its simplest terms.
Okay, so one, would I be out of line to say the REC was way off last year, and if it was, how do we correct that?
No, it's not way off. It's never way off in the scheme of things when you look at it relatively speaking. The state's got a $9 billion plus state general fund budget. It's got overall about a $30 billion budget. Usually the variance in what the REC recommends is oftentimes in the low millions, but relatively speaking to that budget, it is not a huge, massive miscalculation. You're always going to be generally in the area, but you're never going to be right on the button.
Holding off on, Speaker Barra, wouldn't vote for it last fall, said no, said we got to wait. Did holding off, the estimates from the fall were higher than they're going to be now. You got to admit that, right?
Well, we don't know yet. They may be slightly higher than what they are now. We don't know yet. We'll see what the economists tell us specifically tomorrow, but we know that they're an improvement and they're much better than what they were before. So we know we have more money than we had before. The speaker's holding off basically prevented us from having what's called the executive budget because we did not have and we do not have an official forecast for this year. By definition, under the law, we do not have an official forecast for the upcoming year. We'll have it hopefully tomorrow when the speaker recognizes some revenue. If not, we'll have it, I hope, eventually before this legislative session is over. Let me add one thing about the REC and about the state in general. We have a requirement to have a balanced budget in Louisiana. This is a very good thing. At the beginning of the year, our budget must be balanced. At the end of the year, it must be balanced, which is why the revenue change is important during the course of a year because you have to either recognize you have more money, a surplus, or you have less money, a deficit. And if you have a deficit, you have to correct that. You have to make cuts during the middle of the year because you have to end the year with a balanced budget as well. And that's a very good constitutional protection. The state can't print money like the feds can do. We have to live within the means that comes into the state via revenue.
Jay, let me switch to the budget because I struggle with this. There are a lot of conservatives who struggle with this. Our budget projected for this year is now closing in on $32 billion. I don't know why we have what looks to be our largest budget in history at a time when we're losing residents, our population is declining, and lots of other things are not right in our state. How do you wrap your brain around that?
Well, lots of things are right in our state, and we could talk about what's right and what's wrong, but the point is the revenue estimate is based upon what the economists tell us is coming in and what actually comes in. the state general fund revenue, which is basically the taxes that all of us pay, income tax, sales tax, severance tax that the state gets, is around it's in the mid $9 billion of that $30 billion. The big majority comes from the federal government, because when you spend some state dollars, you're able to draw down multiples of federal dollars, which is what makes the budget continually grow. And then we have self-generated revenue coming from fees that people pay to the state, and that's what makes the budget what it is. I mean, like everybody else's budget, things cost more. The state has to provide services. The state has to acquire things. And like everybody else, we're having to pay more for what things cost these days. It's just a fact of life for everybody. So government is not any different when it decides how much tax revenue it ought to have. And as you know, we came into this administration with a $2 billion shortfall, literally, because we were using one-time money for recurring expenses. And now we've managed our budget such that we have surpluses. Surpluses are good. You don't want to have deficits. You don't want to fall short of what your projections tell you ought to be spending.
But I'd like some of the taxes back that you passed, the 0.45 cent sales tax that they voted on to extend through 2025. If we've got surpluses, can we give some of us our money back? Can we get rid of some of that?
No, you shouldn't right now. That would fall us right back into the problems we faced before, when we falsely acted like we had enough money to run state government, when in fact we didn't, because we were using one-time money and we were refusing to recognize the fact that we needed additional revenue based upon what our situation was then and what it is now. The legislature during this upcoming session can consider what to do with taxes. This is a fiscal session, but it would be fiscally irresponsible to say what we did last year was wrong and we're going to now undo it. I mean, we need some stability in this budget, and that's exactly what's been created over the course of the past 4 years that we didn't have during the previous term.
Mr. Jace, Representative Carter, I think, is the legislator who is bringing the gas tax back into. He's introduced a bill to raise the gas tax. I think it starts off at 7 cents, increases over a decade to 20 cents. What do you feel about that? What's the governor's feeling about that? And do you think it's got a chance?
Well, it's probably got a chance, but it's got a tough chance in an election year, frankly. I think it's going to be difficult for any tax measure to pass this year. The governor's not supporting any tax measures. We said last year we needed to deal with the fiscal cliff, and the legislature dealt with it, and he's not supporting any taxes during this particular session. The gas tax needs to be debated. I mean, all over the state, people complain about traffic and complain about roads, and we have a gasoline tax that's been fixed for a number of years. It's based on consumption, and our cars are using less, so it's difficult to keep up with the expenditure of building roads and bridges and maintaining what we have. That having been said, I think it's got a very tough road during this session. I think that's generally what most people think, but there's never a good time to raise taxes. Everybody knows that, but we also know that we have serious issues with our roads and bridges in Louisiana, and sooner or later we're going to have to address that.
Well, why was the governor for the tax increase last year and against it now?
Well, he wasn't for this tax increase last year. He was for the sales tax partial renewal of that 1 penny that went off, and the legislature wound up passing 0.45 of a penny instead of the full penny. So that was necessary because we were facing the fiscal cliff, meaning we wouldn't have enough revenue to pay for what government does. And the legislature agreed, and it passed the 0.45 penny of sales tax. It had nothing to do with the gas tax.
Jay Dardenne, Administration Commissioner during silly season in Baton Rouge. Don't be a stranger.
That's right. Nice talking to y'all.